Release That Witch. Episode 51. Her Majesty. Through the narrow, tall window of the terrace, the light of the setting sun spilled across the floor, painting dark red stripes along the walls. Few places in the kingdom could still see the setting sun, and Clearwater Port was one of them. The months of demons, said to blanket the land in heavy snow and freezing wind, barely touched this place. Apart from the Black Sail fleet being unable to leave port, the city was as busy as ever. And the mistress of this harbour capital, Garcia Wimbledon, sat at the square table beneath the window, earnestly reading the letter in her hands. The sunset dyed her grey hair with a touch of gold, and the play of light and shadow across her face set off her angular features, a distinctive charm, full of heroic spirit. Faring had been standing beside her for quite some time. Though the letter was taking her far longer than usual to read, he chose to wait in silence. He had no wish to be the one to break this tranquility. At last, Garcia sighed softly and set the letter down.
Father is dead.
What?
My father, Erin Wimbledon, the King of Greycastle, dead.
She rarely repeated anything she said, he thought. Had he asked such a question at any other time, she would simply have ignored it. But she was not joking. Was she? The king dead?
Faring opened his mouth, meaning to offer a few words of comfort, but what came out instead was a question.
How did he die?
Fortunately, Garcia did not mind. She was the kingdom's third princess, Lord of Clearwater Port, and Supreme Commander of the Black Sail Fleet. She needed no one's comfort.
The letter says, my brother Goron killed father and was seized on the spot by the royal guards. He did not take his own life to escape the crime, so the king's hand and several ministers put him on public trial. He has been sentenced to beheading.
That's not normal.
Of course it isn't. My brother may be dull, but he is not stupid enough to seek his own death. Without someone guiding him, he could never have done such a thing.
Someone framed him?
Let me guess. Someone laid out a detailed plan and tempted him with a promise to help him take the throne. To bring men into the palace's inner court, arrangements must be made in advance, removal, substitution, bribery, none of which Goron is good at. Or rather, he couldn't be bothered with such trifles. The rest is simple. The man who made the plan had his complete trust and betrayed him at the very end.
Faring neither agreed nor disagreed. In the end, these were only guesses. The process hardly mattered. The result was what counted. He believed Her Highness thought the same.
Men like that my eldest brother had 9 of them, if not 10, all brawn with muscle between their ears. No surprise he was played for a fool, but still.
At those words, a trace of anger crept into her voice.
My second brother's methods are far too crude.
You mean it was Typhoco Wimbledon's doing?
Who else knows Goron so well? And once it was done, who profited most? Even a blind man could see it. And yet, with the favoritism father showed him, he never needed to go this far.
Her Highness was angry. Faring realized, and it was no common sight for Garcia to show such an expression. It seemed that, for all her complaints about Wimbledon III's favoritism, she had never wished an end like this upon her father. It was a feeling Faring could more or less understand. In a great family, the head of the house always felt like a mountain one longed to cross, revered and resented at once. If she was right, and this truly was the second prince's doing, then the deed could fairly be called brutal. But why would he do it?
Because he fears me. He fears the Black Sail.
Seeing that Faring did not answer, she went on.
Typhoco has eyes in Clearwater Port that is no surprise. just as I have ears in Gold Flag City and the capital. Once he learned the Black Sail fleet existed, my next move was easy to guess. Gold Flag City could never raise an army able to stand against the Black Sail. So he chose the stupidest method, using Goron as bait to get what he wanted.
You're saying he wants the army?
He wants the throne. With Goron dead, he is first in the line of succession, and with father gone, he is no doubt already on his way to the capital. Once he becomes Wimbledon IV, he can summon his vassals and their armies without the limits of his own domain. And yet, as I said, as father's most beloved son, he never needed to do any of this.
Then, isn't it worse if the second prince is crowned, declares the battle for the throne over, and orders you back to the capital? What then?
That move is far too blatant. Father's favoritism does not mean every minister will support him least of all over the murder of a king. Typheco pinned it on Goron, but that fools only the common folk of the kingdom. To truly grasp the power of Greycastle will take him a long while yet, so I shall have to adjust my plans a little.
Faring dropped to one knee at once.
I am at your command.
Once he takes the throne, his first move will surely be against me. Yet the only means he'll have is to order Joey Cole, the Duke of the Southern Territory, to pressure me. And that old fox will surely find his excuses. The king newly dead, the realm in mourning, no fit time for war, he never takes a losing deal. At most, he'll muster his vassals and put on a show at Clearwater's border. Still, such moves would bring us no end of petty troubles. So we set sail tomorrow.
Set sail? Your Highness, you mean to?
Eagle City sits deep in the kingdom's heartland. It is practically an undefended city. A tributary of the Three Bay River reaches Clear Spring Town, and from there, Eagle City is a single day's march. Take Joey, and the entire Southern Territory falls under my control. It is a delightful little time difference when he sits on the throne and tries to order Duke Joey around. He will find the whole of the South already mine. I would love to see his face then.
But you said it yourself, Wimbledon III has only just passed away. To do this now would be...
What? Must I shed tears first?
Garcia turned around. The sun, sinking into the horizon of the sea, draped her in a veil of purple and crimson. Her face receded into shadow. Only her eyes gleamed with a fine, sharp light. Those eyes were firm as rock, Faring thought. Anger might be in them, and regret but never grief. Grief does not suit a king.
No, you don't need to.
Go, summon every captain to me. Since Typheco won't wait 5 years, I won't disappoint him. Once I have Eagle City, the entire South becomes independent.
Whether Typheco had truly done it hardly mattered, he thought. She could always find a path that suited her amid the most treacherous turns, and once she decided, she never wavered. That was her charm. That was why he had followed her all this way. As you command, Your Highness. No, Your Majesty, my Queen.
Release That Witch. Episode 52. The Fire of the Heart, Part 1. Roland knocked on the door. Only after hearing Nightingale's answer did he push it open and step inside. Heavy curtains hung over the room's windows. They were open to air the room only at dawn and dusk. The rest of the time, for warmth and against the light, they stayed shut. The only light came from 2 candlesticks at the foot of the bed, burning quietly, casting 2 crossing shadows over the room's furnishings. He walked to the bedside, gazed down at the woman buried in soft velvet pillows and quilts, her eyes still closed in unbroken sleep, and sighed softly.
How are things on the borderline?
Nightingale stepped forward and handed him a cup of warm water. Roland took a casual sip and passed the cup back to her.
Everything is going smoothly enough. Since that day, we haven't run into any large packs of beasts. And once the wounded militiamen return to their units fully healed, everyone's fighting spirit has gotten rather high.
And the broken section of the wall?
Carl used rolling logs to move the hybrid's carapace over to the breach and hoisted it upright with a winch and a wooden frame. It's part of the wall now.
Roland knew she was asking these questions to distract him, to keep him from drowning in worry. But the moment he stepped into this room, all of his awareness gathered, in spite of himself, upon the sleeping woman on the bed. If the last great victory over the demonic beasts had one undisputed hero, it was Anna. Had she not sealed the breach in the wall with her flames, the consequences would have been unthinkable. And yet, after fainting into his arms, she had never woken again.
It's been a whole week. In theory, a person left comatose for a week, no food, no water, no outside supply of nutrients, no injections, would fall into organ failure and the brain would slowly die in shock. But Anna showed no sign of wasting away. If anything, she looked far better than when she had first collapsed. Her cheeks were rosy, her breathing steady, a hand on her forehead felt a normal human warmth. Everything said she was healthy. She simply could not wake.
This is a first for me as well. The magic within her was utterly spent in that battle, yet now it has grown saturated again, denser even than it used to be. If my reckoning is right, tonight at midnight is her day of adulthood.
You mean she'll come of age while unconscious?
No, she will die in her coma. The agony of the day of adulthood must be overcome with will. The moment one stops resisting, the backlash of magic will destroy a witch's body beyond all recovery.
Roland pulled up a chair and sat down by the bed.
But I remember you telling me, when the demons bite, no matter how great the pain, the mind stays awake throughout. Either you endure it, or you choose to end your life.
That is true. In the Witch Cooperation Association, there were those who tried to sleep through the demon's bite, and that was not even the day of adulthood, only the torment that comes once a year. She used an alchemical drug to make herself sleep. It was meaningless. The instant the magic struck back, she woke and had lost all strength to resist.
Doesn't the pain build up gradually?
It does not. When the moment arrives, the pain descends like a thunderbolt. How long it lasts differs from person to person. My sisters were not weak. It's only that.
Her voice trailed away. Roland understood what she meant. A sentence with an unknown limit was itself a kind of torture, never knowing how long you have endured, never knowing how much longer you must endure. Like a lone boat adrift on a stormy sea, it easily makes one give up the will to live. In the silence, he felt a hand come to rest on his shoulder.
In all these years of wandering, I have seen too much death. Witches treated like livestock, hanged, burned, or taken by nobles as playthings, tortured inch by inch to death. The lucky ones who escaped could only live far from other people, cut off from the world. And the holy mountain, lying no one knows where, was only an unreachable dream in their hearts. But Anna is different. Apart from my sisters in the association, she was the first person I ever saw care for a witch. So, she was needed, she was valued, she was treated as a normal human being, Your Highness. Even if Anna does not survive her adulthood, she has already found her holy mountain.
But this was not the ending he hoped for. Roland closed his eyes and remembered his first meeting with her. Barefoot, her clothes in rags, standing inside a cage, yet her face had held not a trace of fear. Her eyes were like a lake that had never been polluted, clear and calm. She was flame, and yet she did not flicker like flame. The images turned one after another, like a lantern show of memories.
You have satisfied your curiosity, my lord. Can you kill me now? I have never used it to hurt anyone. I only want to stay by your highness's side. That is all. The demon's bite cannot kill me. I will defeat it. Are you dreaming? I'm not going anywhere.
Roland pressed down the surging tide of his thoughts and spoke in a low voice.
I'll stay with her until the very last moment.
So will I. And thank you.
After dinner, Nanawa came as well. Hearing that Anna was about to face her adulthood, she insisted on staying. Roland had no choice but to arrange an extra room on the second floor for Tigu Pine, who had accompanied her. And so Roland and the two witches sat around the bed, quietly waiting for midnight. For Nightingale and Nanawa, the demon's bite awaited them this winter as well. Thankfully, each one's day of awakening was different otherwise. With three witches facing a life and death trial at the same moment, Roland doubted he could keep up even a pretense of calm. The town had no bell tower. In the dim candlelight, the passage of time grew vague. Cold wind beat against the window. Now and then came the whistle of air, slipping through the cracks. Just as a thread of weariness began to creep over Roland's heart.
It's starting.
Only she could see it, the mass of magic inside Anna growing restless. The green flame grew denser and denser. Its white-hot center turned dark. The frenzied magic gathered toward the core as if something were dragging at it, struggling, churning, and all in vain. Roland could see none of this, but he too sensed that something was wrong. The candle flames wavered, though there was no wind in the room. Their light grew dimmer and dimmer, as if being swallowed by the surrounding shadows. Then the color of the flame tips changed. The orange-red fire turned a ghostly jade green. He looked toward the woman on the bed. Anna slept on. Her face had not changed at all, as if none of this had anything to do with her. By now, the candlelight had almost vanished entirely. The flames had not gone out, rather. The green fire was devouring the orange, bit by bit, until the last of the light disappeared, and darkness swallowed them all. But soon, the light returned. Only this time, the flames on the candlesticks burned a pure emerald green. The three of them, bathed in green light, stared at one another wide-eyed, at a loss to understand what was happening. Then a soft moan from Anna pulled all three gazes back to her. Slowly, she opened her eyes.
Anna?
She blinked and gave him a smile. Then she stretched out her right hand, opened her palm, and held it out before the prince. A cluster of green fire leapt from her palm and burned in silence. Somehow, Roland felt he understood what she meant. He hesitated a moment, then slowly slid his fingers into the flame. The searing heat he had expected never came. There was only a softness and warmth like being wrapped in gentle water. Release That Witch, Episode 53, The Fire of the Heart, Part 2. The day after Anna awoke, Nightingale came to take her leave of Roland.
We don't know why yet, but she may be the first witch ever to come through her awakening day unharmed. I will bring back the sisters of the association. When I do, I hope you will take them in just as you took in Anna.
Roland could hardly have asked for more. A single Anna had carried them past the hot forging process and shown the little town the dawn of the industrial age. What would a whole company of witches mean? Still, for safety's sake, he tried to persuade her to stay to wait until the months of demons were over before setting out for the impassable mountains. But Nightingale was plainly too impatient to wait.
This winter, many more will face that same ordeal. If I can bring them the news even a little sooner, Perhaps a few more of them will live to see the spring. Don't worry, ordinary demonic beasts will never find my trail.
Then, when is your own awakening day?
Nightingale swung herself up into the saddle.
At winter's end, when spring begins, don't worry about me. In recent years, the pain has grown fainter and fainter.
She waved, leaving the prince with only a view of her back, and that answer set Roland thinking.
He had been pondering all along why Anna's awakening day had gone so smoothly. By Anna's own account afterward, she had felt no pain at all, which overturned everything Nightingale believed. A witch's power comes from the devil. Witches are evil and unclean. Such claims arose precisely from that torment. And the ghastly death, blood boiled away and skin scorched black, became ironclad proof of a fallen power. Yet Roland had never thought that way from the start. He had searched every corner of the fourth prince's memory and found no proof that any true god or devil existed in this world. If the power was not God-given, it should not be made a standard of good and evil. Besides, even in worlds where gods did meddle in mortal affairs, it was the believers who first chose their side and were then granted divine power, not the other way around. By Nightingale's account, a witch is a vessel in which magic gathers. What if it was precisely because the magic had no release that the vessel itself broke down? The more he thought, the likelier it seemed. Hated and hounded by all, witches would hide their abilities, pretend to be ordinary people, live in constant fear, which meant that before adulthood, they had almost no chance to use their magic at all. Roland certainly did not believe his castle happened to be some geomantic treasure land. He had asked Anna. Before this year, she too had suffered unbearable pain. So what was different about this year? Only this, since coming to the castle, she had used that power almost every single day. And Nightingale's last answer quietly confirmed his guess. Her invisibility drew no notice however often she used it. She had once been forced to train that ability, and now used it without the slightest restraint. That was why the Awakening Day's backlash affected her so little.
Back at the castle, Roland immediately stepped up Nanawa's training. If there were no wounded on the borderline, she was to heal all manner of small animals. If Nanawa's case could prove his theory, the meaning for witches would be earth-shaking. The devil's curse would become a gift from heaven. And so long as he kept his domain open to witches, they would come flocking to him without end. Whatever the case, once the excitement passed, everything returned to its proper track. Roland pressed ahead with production of steam engine number 2, which was also a chance for Anna to grow familiar with her new ability. Another shed went up in the castle's backyard, this time to keep out the wind and snow. As an experimental base, he still felt it was safest built on his own ground. By Nightingale's account, once a witch comes of age, her power stabilizes and may even grow new branches. He had yet to see Anna display any new branch, but in the use of flame, she was already utterly different from before. No, whether it could still be called flame at all was a question, Roland thought. Her previous fire had at least stayed within what common sense could explain. This jade green ghost fire had left common sense behind. He gave it a name, the Heart Fire, for it could exist apart from Anna herself and change its shape at her will, just as it was doing now. A small tongue of flame stood on an iron plate 2 meters away from her, swaying gently back and forth, as if bowing to her in greeting. Roland knew it was Anna who guided it. Ordinarily, it kept a temperature close to the warmth of a human body. Only when Anna willed it hotter would it soar to a fiercer heat, its color deepening from jade green to dark emerald. It could swell from a single tongue of fire into a great blaze, or crawl slowly along at a deliberate pace. Regrettably, it could never stray far from Anna. Repeated tests had shown, beyond 5 meters, the Heart Fire winked out. The Heart Fire had another trait as well. Anna could summon more than one flame at once, though for now, 2 at a time was the most she could barely manage. On the border, all had been calm of late. Demonic beasts still trickled up to the wall, but without hybrids among them, ordinary beasts could hardly break the line. As Roland had said, stronger than before, faster than before, but beasts still. With a long stretch of rampart channeling them all toward the middle section, even a militia of barely 100 men could cope. So apart from the daily inspection rounds, Roland had plenty of time to spend on construction. He had already marked out a plot of land south of the castle to be the witches' residence once they arrived. As the project's investor, he appointed Karl to take charge. A batch of 2-story brick houses would rise there, pleasing to the eye and sensibly arranged, easy to enter and leave, quick to drain. A model district, if all went well. He had also considered scattering the witches through the old and new districts to live among the townsfolk, but gave up the idea in the end. It would have sped up the people's understanding of witches, true. But until misunderstandings were fully cleared away, a single incident could do damage beyond repair. For now, witches held influence only within the militia.
Nor could Roland guarantee that every witch Nightingale brought back would be pure and harmless. Most of them had tasted the world's pain and cruelty. A word like innocent would no longer describe them. Witches like Anna and Nanava would be the rare few among them.
Living together also meant easier management. Before they arrived, rules and regulations had to be drawn up. On that front, Roland had no experience whatsoever to draw on. After all, he was neither an agent of some National Security Bureau's Office of Superpowers, nor the founder of an Avengers League. Who on earth knew how to manage a band of superpowered people?
He could only sketch out a basic system, the way an ordinary company manages its people, and cross the river by feeling the stones from there. Of course, Roland knew the plan was full of holes. But as a pioneer, if he did not do it, who would? Tail between his legs, holed up in this border town, perhaps in a few decades he might just grope his way to the threshold of industrialization. But he was no Taoist immortal seeking longevity. How many decades did a man have? To lead an era forward, to stand at the forefront of reform, one had to have the spirit of adventure.
He was just setting these thoughts down on parchment, one by one, when Barov pushed open the door and came in. Shaking the snowflakes from his clothes, he bowed to the prince.
Your Highness, the messenger from Longsong Stronghold has arrived.
Release That Witch, Episode 54, The Grim Tidings.
Petrov had not expected to revisit this place so soon. He had no wish to leave his warm house in such a cold winter, especially while demonic beasts ran rampant. But Duke Ryan had named him, by name, to deliver this scalding hot document into the fourth prince's hands.
Of course, he knew the document's contents. In fact, all of Greycastle's high nobility was discussing the shocking news. The King of Greycastle had fallen to murder, and his murderer was Goron Wimbledon, the king's own eldest son. The second son had then rushed to the capital, declaring that the realm could not go a single day without a king, and that he would take the throne as second in the line of succession. Yet this was not accepted by everyone. Some declared Goron's trial deeply suspect. Through the entire interrogation, he appeared only a handful of times, unable to speak, his hands bound tight. Better, they said, to wait until the matter was fully investigated before deciding who took the throne. Others whispered that it was nothing but a play written and directed by the second son, Tyfecker Wimbledon, that the true murderer was the second prince himself, wearing a grieving face while he impatiently awaited his coronation day. But whoever was right or wrong in this quarrel, with the Prime Minister's full support, the second prince had seized the power of Greycastle's supreme ruler as acting king. At the same time, he issued a recall order to every competitor. The battle for the throne was over. Each prince and princess, upon receiving the decree, was to return to the capital before winter's end. The new king would formally grant domains and titles based on these 6 months of governance.
Petrov could certainly see the urgency behind that order. Whether Tyfecker Wimbledon could keep his seat depended entirely on how the other princes and princesses reacted. If they all obediently abandoned the contest and returned to the capital, he would naturally become the undisputed Wimbledon IV. Documents bound for Bordertown were first forwarded through Longsong Stronghold, and Duke Ryan himself sneered at the recall order. While the old king lived, he had kept a firm grip on the lords of the realm. As for the second prince, Even his forced ascension was clumsy work. And with the precedent of Goran sent to the guillotine, no one would willingly return to the capital alone. But in the eyes of the Stronghold's 6 families, this was a timely order indeed. 2 months ago, Count Elk's unauthorized scheme had displeased the Duke greatly, especially since it failed, and the prince's reaction had been fierce. He sentenced Healesmead to the gallows on the spot. With that, the 2 sides had openly torn off all pretense of goodwill. The Duke had originally planned to wait until the months of demons ended before freeing his hands to settle this trouble. Now, with this official document, he could act with perfect legitimacy. If Roland Wimbledon returned to the capital, Bordertown would naturally fall to Duke Ryan. If he did not, then force would answer, flying the banner of the new king. As for who finally wore the crown, the Duke did not much care.
And as the ambassador, Petrov was plainly less than comfortable. Last time, he had vowed with utter confidence that he would bring back a new trade contract, and what came instead was the Elk family's stab in the dark. Now here he was again, and what he brought was equally grim tidings. Be it the death of Wimbledon III or the new king's recall order, Petrov believed the 4th prince would want to see neither. The voyage itself went smoothly enough. Grey Castle lay toward the south of the continent. Even in winter, its rivers did not freeze.
From time to time, Petrov peered through the window at the riverbanks. Along the whole way, he saw neither starved corpses by the roadside, nor people fleeing as refugees, which meant Bordertown had not yet fallen. This surprised him somewhat. After all, on his last visit he had seen with his own eyes how that wall was built. Of these stone walls pasted together with mud, Petrov had held precious little confidence. Then, something surprised him even more. A sailboat flying Willowtown's banner glided slowly past on the right side of the channel. The scene felt familiar, but these were the months of demons. They had leisure to do business while fighting demonic beasts. Without pulling every mining worker onto the defense line, how could they possibly hold back those savage monsters?
3 days later, the ship arrived at Bordertown's wharf. It was still the same shabby wooden pier, though now a simple wooden shed stood beside it. When the ship docked, 2 guards stepped out of the shed, eyes fixed on the boatman's every move.
Petrov understood at once why Roland had posted a sentry here. The 4th prince clearly did not want anyone slipping out of the town by water.
He hopped down from the gunwale. After stating his identity to the guards, one of them led over a horse and accompanied him to the castle. As before, Prince Roland Wimbledon received him in the sitting room. Not only that, though, it was not mealtime. The prince ordered his attendants to lay out a rich spread, a charcoal-roasted pork leg, sliced dried fish, a basin of cold-dressed wild greens he could not name, and the buttered bread and vegetable soup seen at any banquet.
It seemed this prince liked to dine first and talk business after. As he thought this, Petrov's hands never paused for a moment. Chances to eat one's fill came rarely. Even the Honeysuckle family, when no guests were being entertained, ate mostly potato bread with salted dried meat.
When the main course was finished and the dessert was brought in, Petrov respectfully presented the document. Roland took it, cut the sealing wax open with a table knife, drew out the scroll, skimmed a few lines, and froze.
The king is dead? Toward this father in name only, Roland felt nothing at all. When he crossed over into this world, he was already in Bordertown. The two had never even met face to face. Not to mention that in the 4th prince's memories, there was only complaint and resentment toward his father. Because of that, he found himself in a strange embarrassment. Should he put on a show of grief and sorrow or not? And what came next smelled faintly of conspiracy. Wimbledon III, murdered by his eldest son. The 2nd prince, as the new king, declaring the battle for the throne over and ordering me to return to the capital of Grey Castle forthwith.
Roland coughed twice and raised his head just in time to catch the apologetic look in Petrov's eyes.
So that's how it is, he thought. The Duke of the Stronghold is surely delighted by all this. Whether I obey the new king's order or not, I am caught between two fires either way. He had not brought the promised contract. Instead, he brought bad news, like a summons to one's death. The man probably felt guilty about it himself. Roland smiled inwardly and folded the document back up. I understand.
Your Highness, then what do you intend to?
Even if I wanted to leave, it would have to wait until the months of demons are over. It's ice and snow as far as the eye can see. If I left now, what would happen to the people of Bordertown?
Had it been anyone else, Petrov would surely have answered with some perfunctory line, "Don't worry, the Stronghold will handle everything properly," or some other formula of diplomatic business. But before this fourth prince, whom he had met only twice, he could not bring the words out easily. For the first time, Petrov felt disgust at his own status as ambassador. In the end, he only nodded.
I understand. Shall I carry a reply letter back for you?
Roland had his abendants bring pen and paper, quickly wrote a reply, stamped his own seal into the sealing wax, and handed it to Petrov. The latter glanced over the envelope. On the cover, it was written clearly, "To Typhaco Wimbledon, 2nd Prince of Greycastle," not "To King Wimbledon, the 4th.
He has made his attitude plain, Petrov thought.
Release That Witch, Episode 55. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Roland pushed open the door to his office. Barov had been waiting inside for quite some time. He tossed the document to the assistant minister, flopped straight into his armchair, and propped his feet up on the desk. If there had been no outsiders present, he would truly have hummed a little tune.
Your Highness, please accept my condolences. The king has unfortunately passed, and the murderer is the first prince himself, a true tragedy. May I ask what Your Highness intends to do next?
Goron's death is far too suspicious. I want to see what my third sister and fifth sister decide before making plans. But in any case, there are things we should guard against early.
Barov looked toward the prince, waiting for him to go on.
The capital may well turn turbulent over this change of kings. First things first, get your families and kin out of there. You and Carter and the men under you, each of you write a letter home. I'll have my personal guards carry them to the capital and arrange for your families to shelter in other towns for the time being.
More importantly, this would keep the second prince from using those people to threaten his own ministers. As things stood, keeping Bordertown's administration and finances running made the assistant minister indispensable.
Not bring them to Bordertown?
Barov was no fool. More than 20 years of political experience let him grasp the prince's deeper meaning at once.
No need.
Roland did not want anyone using families to threaten his men, nor did he want his men thinking he was using their families to threaten them. So he chose a middle course, settle them in safer towns first, and move them over once Bordertown stood firmly on its own feet.
I understand. Thank you for your consideration, Your Highness.
The assistant minister nodded his agreement, and Roland breathed a sigh of relief. When all was said and done, he had far too few capable people at hand.
One more thing. The ore trade. Suspend iron exports for the time being. Sell only gem rough to Willowtown. I need the iron ore kept here for our own use.
That will lower the treasury's income, Your Highness.
But not by much. The miners have found a new gem deposit. It will cover part of the gap.
Besides, winter brought little business anyway. No one wanted to travel as a merchant on days when demonic beasts might appear at any moment. Across the long 4 months, there might be only 2 or 3 rounds of trade at all. And for a light single-masted sailboat, hauling gem rough was plainly the more profitable choice. Barov noted it all down. When the assistant minister had left, Roland called in Carter Lannis.
I need to expand the militia. Once the recruitment notice goes out, you make the arrangements. Pull a few quick-witted, capable members from the ranks to serve as captains of the new company. Train them by the same method we used last time.
Your Highness, if we still train by last time's method, the new company will need a very long while before it's of any use.
Still better than a disorderly mob. do as I say. Though troops trained this way were far from a proper army, about the level of college students fresh out of military training, combat strength was measured against the opponent. Apart from brainless demonic beasts, the most likely enemies were makeshift armies cobbled together from private guards, mercenaries and serfs. With weapons a whole era ahead, college student level was near enough.
When Carter too had left, Roland could not help laughing out loud. He had never expected such a perfect coincidence. It was like charcoal delivered in a snowstorm, like a pillow handed to a man about to doze off.
Grim tidings for me? A dilemma between two evils? Utterly wrong. He did not know much about Garcia Wimbledon, but she was no lamb waiting to be slaughtered. With the first prince sentenced to death in such a short time, even if nothing were amiss, she would hardly return to the capital so easily. All he had to do was follow suit. So long as I hold fast in Border Town, someone is bound to jump out, and the Duke of the Stronghold will most likely be the first who cannot sit still. Otherwise, he wouldn't have rushed this recall order into my hands in this godforsaken weather. His Grace wants me to see it a day sooner and lose sleep over it a day sooner. If I choose to stay in Border Town, that equals defying the new king's decree. And once the months of demons are over, His Grace will, 9 times out of 10, come teach me a profound lesson under Typheco Wimbledon's banner. And that is exactly what I need. If you ask what industrialization lacks most, the answer is beyond doubt: people. It takes great masses thrown into this enormous production, turning people into parts one by one, driving this incomparably huge machine. It is no exaggeration to say that England's enclosure movement, sheep devouring men, drove multitudes of farmers off the land, made them into free laborers, and laid the deep foundation for the industrial revolution that followed. The industrial age is just that crude. Keep feeding this furnace workers with a universal basic education, and it returns rich rewards. The finer the division of industry, the more the population it requires multiplies. What had always troubled Roland was precisely the question of population. Border Town had 2,000 residents in all. Even with the machinery of a new era, it was workshop-scale production at best. Without a large usable population, many projects could not even begin. But where was he to beg, borrow or steal that many people? Buy slaves? Never mind where one could buy 1,000 slaves at once. Grown slaves cost dearly and had little room left for training. Slaves under 10 took too long to raise. Even if he hardened his heart and employed child labor, it would be years before they were of use. Recruit talent? How many would journey to a borderland like this, and the cost would only exceed buying slaves? Encourage childbirth? Forced marriage? Forget it. It was not that he hadn't set his sights on Longsong's stronghold, but while the kingdom was stable, moving against neighboring lords would be joking with his own future, and Duke Ryan likewise dared not openly move against him, only trip him up in the dark. But now, it is different. With Typheco on the throne, desperate for every rival to disappear, as this recall order plainly shows, Duke Ryan can see it too. Once free of the old king's restraint, as master of the Western Territory, it would be strange if he did nothing at all. This is the opening I have waited so long for. Longsong's stronghold, a frontier fortress of the kingdom, built up over 100 years, has nearly 10,000 permanent residents. And behind the stronghold lie broad lands and towns with no power to defend themselves. Defeat the Duke, take that city, and I gain a great mass of free citizens while completing my primitive accumulation of wealth at the same time. What gains population more easily than annexation? What accumulates wealth faster than plunder? This news is a lighthouse scattering the fog, lighting the way forward. There is no way I am letting a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity like this slip away.
Release That Witch. Episode 56. Among the Mountains. Nightingale walked slowly along the mountain path. The road beneath her feet was barely shoulder wide. On one side rose a giant stone wall. Across from it, steep cliffs. Between the two yawned a gap some 10 feet wide, its depths beyond all sight. She pressed carefully against the wall, lest she lose her footing and slip down. Looking up, the sky had shrunk to a single faintly glowing thread, like a strand of silver hung across the night sky. Yet she knew it was just past midday. Even by day, she had to hold up a torch. The light filtering down the rock faces was not enough to show the way ahead. Walk long enough, and she could almost believe she was walking inside the mountain itself. The place had only one virtue. Though cold winds howled and heavy snow flew through the mountain ranges, between the gorge walls none of it reached. Now and then a few snowflakes drifted down from overhead and melted into vapor as soon as they touched the walls or the path. The air here held a warmth that did not match the world outside. Sometimes she could even see heat rising from the abyss beneath her feet.
Were it not so, she would never have dared travel alone to the impassable mountains in the months of demons. The mist could hide her form, but it could not keep out the cold. On foot, against that freezing wind, she would have frozen to death in the snow within the hour. Yet, Nightingale had no wish to linger here a moment longer, for she kept feeling that something in the darkness was watching her, and it made her skin crawl.
If she could have, Nightingale would have walked the whole way inside the mist. Sadly, her strength did not allow it. Using her ability for long stretches quickly left her exhausted. Nightingale raised her torch. The cliff across from her flickered in and out of sight, and in the faint firelight she could sometimes make out black shapes of different sizes on the far wall. She knew they were caves too deep for light to enter, so they looked like blobs of shadow. And in the wall she was pressed against, at just the same positions, there were matching holes, one for one.
It reminded her of the rumours about the mine on the North Slope. They said it had once been a den of underground monsters, full of branching tunnels, running in every direction, all dug out by those creatures. And the North Slope was only one corner of the impassable mountains. What if these caves, too, held tunnels that connected with that mine? The thought sent a shiver through her.
West of the impassable mountains lay wildlands where no man had ever set foot. If the towering ranges that ran for hundreds of miles could be hollowed out with countless holes, only the monsters of the wildlands could have done such a thing. She dared not think any further, and focused her mind on walking. At last, the path ahead changed. The shoulder-wide road split in two. One slanted gently upward, the other turned straight down, stretching into deeper places, its end quickly swallowed by darkness. No one knew where that road led at last. Standing at the fork, the feeling of being watched had grown very strong, as if countless eyes in the darkness were fixed on her, unblinking. Her mouth went dry, her scalp prickled. Nightingale gritted her teeth, called up the mist, and hurried upward. Soon the strange feeling faded away. As she climbed, the air around her gradually grew colder, and the silver thread overhead grew wider and wider. A quarter of an hour later, a huge cave appeared ahead to her right, its lower lip slightly higher than the path. She lifted her leg and stepped into it. Deep inside the cave, firelight faintly showed. This was where the Witch Cooperation Association lay hidden. The moment Nightingale stepped out of the mist, the witch standing watch spotted her. A wall of black gas rose before her, then quickly dissolved into nothing, and out of the darkness came a companion's cry of delight.
You're back.
Back at last, she thought. But then she noticed the two strips of white cloth tied around her companion's arm, and her newly lifted heart sank again. 2 more sisters?
Yes. Annan and Ashes. 5 days ago, they didn't survive their adulthood. It happens all the time, doesn't it? Never mind that. Get to the camp, quickly. Wendy has been talking about you for ages.
Einine and Ashes, a pair of twins brought out of a wealthy family in Fallen Dragon Ridge, only to end their lives in these deep mountains. Sometimes Nightingale wondered whether what she had done was right. Had she not taken the two of them away, they could at least have enjoyed fine food and warm clothing before death came, instead of drifting with the rest of them, homeless, with no roof to call their own. But at the thought of Wendy, a warm current welled up in Nightingale's heart. If Wendy had not reached out a hand to her, she might still be a puppet, used as a tool to be thrown away at any time. Right, she had to tell her the news, and soon tell all the sisters. They no longer had to hide like rats scurrying east and west. Someone was willing to take them in, and they might even pass each year's awakening day unharmed.
Walking into the camp, Nightingale saw a familiar figure crouching by the bonfire, preparing food. Before she had even come close, she could not hold back her cry.
Wendy, I'm back.
The figure paused in her work, raised her head, and then smiled, the smile Nightingale knew so well.
Veronica, welcome home.
Wendy was an exceedingly kind woman, and one of the earliest members of the association, now past 30. Her face showed not a single wrinkle. Straight red-brown hair fell almost to her waist. Her features were mature and full of charm like an elder sister to everyone she met. She cared for every sister of the association, helping in daily life and in matters of the heart in every way within her power. Without Wendy, the association could never have gathered so many witches so quickly. It was because she met her that Nightingale had resolutely broken away from her family and set out with her on the journey to find the Holy Mountain. She was also one of the very few who knew Nightingale's original name.
How many times must I say it? I am no longer that timid little girl I used to be. I am a powerful witch now. Veronica no longer exists. The person you were is still you. Escaping an old nightmare doesn't mean you must cut away your past. But as long as you're happy, Nightingale, I've been waiting for you to come back. It was a hard journey.
Nightingale stepped forward, and the two of them wrapped each other in an embrace. "Thank you," she whispered.
So, how is that girl? You couldn't save her.
At that, Nightingale's spirits soared at once. She grabbed Wendy's arm and burst out excitedly.
No, she didn't need me to save her. If anything, she saved all of us. The lord there is called Roland Wimbledon, the fourth prince of the Kingdom of Greycastle. He is willing to take us in, and he promised that one day, in his domain, witches will be able to live like free citizens.
Release That Witch, Episode 57, Hakara, the Snake Witch. But Wendy did not share her excitement. Her voice carried a note of doubt.
Did he really say that? Yes. And before I ever arrived, he had already saved Anna and Nanawa. The prince has never believed that a witch's power comes from the devil. He said it is a power that belongs to ourselves.
Nightingale broke off abruptly. She realized the other woman did not believe what she had said.
All right, she thought. It isn't Wendy's fault. In her place, I probably wouldn't yearn for it either, on one witch's say-so alone. Witches have been oppressed too long. On the road from the Eastern Territory to the Impassable Mountains, too many living examples stood before them. Betrayal and abandonment were common occurrences. They had long since lost the ability to trust others so easily. At the thought, her excitement gradually settled. Perhaps this trip would not go as smoothly as she had imagined. Wendy, you know my branch ability. Besides seeing the flow of magic, I can tell whether someone is lying. I once asked him, why would he take such a great risk? Why do this much for witches? He answered me, Bordertown doesn't care about origins. He wants all witches to become free citizens. If he does that, he will become a thorn in the church's side. Even if the prince doesn't know what that means, how can you not? My first thought was almost exactly the same as yours. I asked him, can all this really be done? And do you know how he answered me? If you never take that step, you will never know the answer.
He wasn't lying?
He wasn't lying.
It sounds simply unbelievable.
Wendy's tone had loosened somewhat. Toward this friend of many years, she truly could think of no reason for her to lie.
Yes. Had she not seen it with her own eyes and verified it with her ability, she would hardly have made up her mind so quickly either. Looking back now, it was just as Roland had told her at the Wall's watchtower. He really did very rarely lie. In nearly 2 months together, except for not being entirely honest about what the ice mint was for everything else, had satisfied Nightingale well enough.
Of course, in her heart, she did not mind that one small deception. To lay every secret open to a strange witch one had only just met, that would have been the strange thing.
Tonight, when everyone is back, I want to tell the sisters this important news, and I hope you will help me persuade them.
When evening fell, the witches who had been busy outside began returning to camp one after another. Seeing Nightingale back safe, everyone was happy, crowding around with questions from every side. Seeing the white strips of cloth tied on their arms, Nightingale felt her heart grow heavy. After answering a few questions in passing, she raised a hand for silence. What followed was a long account. She began with sneaking into Bordertown, then meeting Roland, Anna, and Nanawa, then building the city wall, assembling the steam engine, and finally resisting the demonic beasts and Anna's day of adulthood. From her bosom, Nightingale drew out the roll of steam engine blueprints she had seized by force, to prove to everyone that she was not lying. Most of the witches had lived cut off from the world since joining the association, and could hardly imagine life outside. Every one of them listened spellbound. And when Nightingale said that Anna had passed her day of adulthood unharmed, without a shred of pain, the crowd exploded. This was the matter that haunted a witch's whole life. They had endured hunger and cold and fled into the impassable mountains, all to find the legendary Holy Mountain. If what Nightingale said was true, if there was a lord willing to take them in, and they might even escape the agony of the demon's bite, would that not be more perfect than a home at the Holy Mountain itself? Just then, the crowd parted to open a path. A witch with a head full of green hair, half her face covered in serpentine tattoos, walked up to Nightingale.
Honoured mentor, my respects.
Nightingale bowed to her. The newcomer was none other than the founder of the Witch Cooperation Association, Hakara, the Snake Witch. Within the association, the sisters all called her Mentor.
I heard those stories of yours. Do you mean to tell everyone that everything we have been doing is wrong?
No, mentor. They are not stories. What I mean is...
Enough. I don't know what you encountered in that border town of yours to make you speak such words. A prince who pities witches, about as laughable as pitying frogs.
She waved her hand impatiently. Then, with a cold sneer, she turned around, spread her arms wide, and called out loudly,
Sisters, have you all forgotten how those mortals treated you?
Before Nightingale could explain, the accusation went on.
Yes, mortals. Those incompetents usurped the god's majestic name and turned blades and whips upon us. Without the stone of God's punishment, what right would they have had to trample witches underfoot? Our powers do not come from demons, they are the god's own gift. And if anyone should act on the god's behalf, it is not the church. It is us, the sisters of the association. The holy mountain recorded in the ancient books is none other than the dwelling place of the god.
What? Nightingale could scarcely believe her ears. In the past, she had thought the association's leader had an eccentric temperament and an obsession with the holy mountain beyond most people's. But she was far from mad. Hakara was not as approachable as Wendy, but at least her care for the sisters had been genuine and sincere. She had never imagined the woman could harbour such hatred for ordinary people. Did that mean that all these years she had been suppressing her hatred and anger, that her so-called non-interference in worldly affairs was only to build up strength in exchange for a day of thunderous vengeance to come? Nightingale wondered darkly. Then what has made her stop wanting to hide herself now? Could it be?
We have found the clue to the opening of the holy mountain exactly as the ancient books record. In 20 more days, when a dripping blood-red moon appears in the night sky, we will pass through that giant stone gate rising from the earth and reach the final shore beyond.
She turned back around and looked Nightingale straight in the eye.
You have been deceived by mortals. From the day we are born, we live inside one enormous lie. The suffering of the day of adulthood is the God's trial of our spirit and flesh. Only the steadfast, the indomitable, deserve true power. As for the church, a pack of mortals who dare to act in the God's name, sooner or later, every last one of them goes to hell. And you, child, it is not too late to turn back. Forget those stories of yours. I can forgive your ignorance and your error, and take you back as a member of the association to seek eternity with us within the holy mountain.
Nightingale's heart had gone completely cold. Suffering is a trial, then the sisters who suffered the demon's bite on their awakening day and did not survive, were they all eliminations not worth mentioning? This way of speaking was no different from the church's own, and the witches around her actually wore looks of agreement. Even Wendy did not step forward. All at once, she felt all taste drain out of everything. In the blink of an eye, the woman before her, founder of the association, the witch's guide, had become a stranger.
She shook her head.
In that case, I will take with me any sister willing to leave. As for those who choose to stay here, I wish you good luck.
Just as Nightingale was about to take her leave, a faint stinging pain came from her calf. She looked down and found a black snake, streaked with shining blue stripes, biting into the muscle of her leg. A snake of magic. Soundless, able to wield many poisons. The signature ability of Hakara, the Snake Witch. Numbness spread swiftly through her whole body. Nightingale opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but what met her was a field of total darkness. Release That Witch, Episode 58. The Escape. After some unknown span of time, when Nightingale came to, she found her hands bound behind her around a wooden stake with rope wound round and round her waist and feet. She tried to struggle, her body was pressed tight against the pole. She could not move at all. She tried to use her ability, but the familiar feeling never came. Her link to magic seemed to have been severed. Nightingale looked down and found a transparent, prism-shaped stone hanging at her neck.
You're awake. How does the petrifying venom feel? Truly, Nightingale, I had high hopes for you, and yet you have betrayed my expectations.
You actually kept a god's punishment lock hidden away, Hakara. Do you even know what you were doing?
A shackle the church used to suppress witches, now wielded by their own mentor against one of her own kind. What infuriated her even more was the wooden faces of the crowd watching all around as if they saw nothing wrong with it. "Damn it!" Nightingale screamed in her heart. "Have you really not noticed that you are becoming the very kind of people witches once hated most?"
Just a tool. Now and then there are disobedient bad children who need to be punished. And you, Nightingale, are the one who needs punishing. Or should I call you Veronica? A woman born into a noble family, fallen to become a witch, and still dreaming of climbing back up to a high place.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You disappoint me so much. When Wendy rescued you from the clutches of the nobles, I thought you would stand firmly on the association's side. And look at what you've done now. Just as we are about to find the Holy Mountain, you want to undo it all on the verge of success. Taking the sisters to throw themselves at a prince? Either you were kept in captivity too long and your slavishness has sunk into the bone you can't live without finding yourself a master, or you mean to sell them all to the nobles in exchange for the status you once had.
Everything I've done was for the sisters of the association. I want them never to suffer the Awakening Day's ravages again. I want them to live without worry for food or clothes. Nor do I mean to block your plan. The sisters should have the right to choose their own way of life freely. Bordertown is changing beyond recognition. The steam engine blueprints I brought are part of that. It runs on its own, with strength beyond measure. With such a machine, water could be hauled up straight from the mountain streams. No one would have to trek back and forth for it every day.
Is this what you mean?
She laughed coldly, turned, and pulled a stack of parchment scrolls from the hands of a witch behind her, waving them in front of Nightingale's face.
I can't make heads or tails of the things drawn on this, but a dead thing cobbled together from cold lumps of iron, moving on its own like a living creature? Do you take us all for 3-year-old children?
She walked up to the brazier and threw the scrolls into the burning charcoal.
No.
Nightingale cried out in vain, and could only watch as the blueprints turned to ash in the brazier.
My patience is at its end. I will give you one last chance.
Hakara drew an iron spike out of the brazier. Its tip had already burned red hot.
If you confess your guilt before all the sisters of the association admit that you were beguiled by the nobles, I can spare your life. But the lash cannot be waived. That is your lesson for trusting the enemy. If you remain unrepentant to the end, I will have to run this spike through your heart and nail your corpse to the stake as a warning to everyone. Do not waste my last mercy. Speak your decision.
Nightingale watched the iron spike creep closer and closer. She could even feel the scorching heat off its tip. If this were the timid girl she used to be, she would surely have bowed her head and admitted fault by now, wouldn't she? But she had said goodbye to the past. She was no longer that cowardly little girl. She was Nightingale, a powerful witch. Not even death could make her yield.
She closed her eyes, waiting for the final moment to come. And somehow, Roland's figure surfaced in her mind.
Stop!
Someone shouted. She blinked in surprise and opened her eyes. Wendy had stepped out of the crowd.
Mentor, look at the white cloths tied on your own arm. We have already been through so many farewells. Do you truly mean to add one more? What have you been deceived by her as well? Wake up, Wendy. Those are all lies. I don't know. Nor do I intend to go with her to Bordertown. But there is one thing I think she said right. The sisters should have the right to choose their own way of life freely.
She turned back around and asked in a loud voice,
Is there anyone who wants to leave with her?
No one in the crowd answered. The scene sank into silence.
Then let her leave alone. She has done nothing to harm the association. I will not stand by and watch you kill her.
By now, Nightingale understood Wendy's meaning completely. A sorrow welled up in her heart. Despite herself, even Wendy had not fully believed her. That was why she had stayed silent when Nightingale asked for help persuading the others. But she was still the same kind-hearted witch who cared for everyone. Even disagreeing with Nightingale's view, she would still reach out a hand.
After Wendy's words, whispering rippled through the crowd, and then a few more stepped forward.
That's right. If she'd rather return to the mortal world, let her go. The church and the demon's bite have already taken too many of our sisters. Mentor, please think again.
All of you, shut your mouths. If we simply let her walk away, what happens when a second Nightingale appears? A third? If she sells the location of our camp to the church, we will have nowhere left to run.
Before her voice had even fallen, she drove the iron spike forward with all her strength, and Wendy was one step faster. She swept up a violent gust of wind that blew Hakara clean off her feet. Then she tossed a coin into the air and flicked her hand. A rapid current of air wrapped around the coin and sent it howling toward Nightingale. Just as it reached her, the current vanished, but the coin kept its inertia and struck the god's punishment stone at the front of her neck with perfect aim. The crystalline, prism-shaped stone shattered on impact.
Traitor!
Hakara scrambled up from the ground, shrieking. She stretched out her left and right hands toward Wendy and Nightingale, and two snake shadows appeared out of thin air. One opened its jaws wide and bit viciously into the back of Wendy's hand. The other snapped at empty air. The ropes slipped to the ground, still holding the shape of their binding, but Nightingale was nowhere to be seen. At the thought of her ability, Hakara broke into a cold sweat. She summoned every drop of her magic. Snakes of magic, gleaming in every color, poured swarming from her chest, forming a wall of serpents while she herself retreated sharply backward. But Nightingale was faster still. One step, a single step, and she was already standing behind Hakara, her hands thrust forward. And the iron spike that should have pierced Nightingale's heart ran straight through Hakara's body. Release That Witch, Episode 59, The Explorer.
Mentor.
Seeing Hakara fall, the witches crowded around her in a panic.
You fools! Quick, go and kill that traitor for me!
She clutched her wound, coughing. The whole lower half of her body had lost all feeling. But by then, Nightingale had already fled into the mist, carrying Wendy with her. Back at the fork in the path, she saw that on the unconscious Wendy's arm, the forearm had already turned black. The venom was spreading inch by inch. There was no more room for hesitation. Gritting her teeth, she rolled up the other's sleeve, tied a cloth strip tight above the arm, then drew a handleless dagger from the sole of her shoe and drove it down with all her strength. It took her a quarter of an hour to cut off Wendy's whole arm. She took off her own robe and wrapped it around the limb with care, then used 2 more straps to bind it fast against her back. So long as she made it back to Bordertown alive, Nanawa could make the severed arm whole again.
But could they really make it back alive? Alone, the trip here had taken her 3 days. Carrying another person would only be slower, and if she hurried and slipped off the narrow path, she had no confidence she could climb back up. Wendy's arm was still seeping blood. At this rate, she would not last 3 or 4 days. But Nightingale had no other choice She could never leave Wendy behind. The woman had been hurt for her sake.
Need a hand?
At the voice that had appeared out of nowhere, Nightingale spread her mist almost in the same instant, settling into a defensive stance. But there was no one in front of her.
Don't be nervous. I don't want to fight you.
Nightingale raised her head and found the other girl floating in midair.
Who are you?
My name's Lightning. I only joined the association recently, and I'm out running around all the time. No surprise you don't know me. But I know you, the famous Nightingale, the killer in the shadows.
Did Hakara send you?
No, don't get me wrong. I want to go with you.
What?
You said it yourself. We should have the right to choose our own way of life. Well, I choose to go with you. Simple as that.
Why?
Nightingale had already lost all faith in the association. Even Wendy had not fully believed her. And this girl before her, she really was still a child, 14 or 15 at most, about Nanawa's age. Short golden hair, neat and crisp, a face full of spirit, and words brimming with a confidence that didn't match her age. She wore no association robe, but a close-fitting long shirt and trousers made for movement, plus a leather jacket so covered in pockets and patches that its age could no longer be told, finished with 2 thick leather belts at the waist, picked up from who knows where. At first glance, she was dressed almost like a boy.
Because of those things you talked about, the black machine that goes huff-huff puffing white steam, the grey powder that turns to stone when it touches water, and the snow powder that bursts out with a roar like thunder. I want to see them. I'm someone who has sworn to become a great explorer. Of course, I go where the interesting things are.
What kind of reason is that? Nightingale was dumbfounded. It sounded utterly absurd, and yet that sense of hers insisted the girl was not lying. I don't understand. If you wanted to be an adventurer, why join the association?
Not an adventurer, an explorer. I'm nothing like those work-for-pay types. Call them adventurers, but they're just jackals who take any dirty job. An explorer acts only out of interest. As for why I joined the association, isn't searching for the Holy Mountain a grand adventure? But Hakara doesn't understand the spirit of exploration at all. She's completely buried in that ancient book, forcing everything found along the way to match what the book records. That stone gate rising from the earth, just 2 weathered stone pillars. Searching on like that, she will never find the real Holy Mountain. An explorer must honestly record everything she sees. Hunting for treasure with a ready-made map is no explorer's work. My dad drummed that into me again and again.
She badly wanted to ask who the girl's father was, to have raised a daughter with such a strange turn of mind, but Nightingale knew this was no time for idle chat. Wendy's life hung by a thread. Since the girl meant no harm, one more helper was all to the good.
Your ability is flight?
Mm-hmm. Even dragging the 2 of you along, I can move like the wind.
Then I'll trouble you.
Nightingale deftly tied Wendy fast behind her back, then climbed onto Lightning's back, folding her arms around the girl's chest.
Oh, heavy. I think, maybe, perhaps, the wind part is off.
And so the 2 of them travelled in turns. When Lightning exhausted her strength, Nightingale would carry her through the mist. Once she had recovered, Nightingale would hang on her back and let her fly them forward. Only when both were utterly spent and forced to stop and rest would Nightingale tentatively ask her a few basic questions about her father, about her family. Lightning claimed her father was the greatest explorer in the world, whose footprints covered every ocean. He had an ocean-going fleet, and his crews affectionately called him Thunder. Her mother had died early, when she was small, leaving few memories behind. On a voyage through storm and squall, their ship struck a reef and went down. She was washed by the current onto a small island and lost all contact with her father. On that little island, using the knowledge and skills her father had taught her, Lightning survived nearly 2 months and awakened as a witch that winter. After that, she headed west, flew across the strait into Grey Castle's southern territory, and after many twists and turns, finally joined the association. She felt that as long as she kept exploring, one day she would meet her father again amid some wonder of the world if he was still alive.
Nightingale could not extract much useful information from these talks. Her ability could only judge whether the other person was lying, not whether the content was true. In other words, if someone declared the sun was square and believed it with all their heart, her ability would judge that true as well. Still, a few things could be inferred. She must have been born into a wealthy family. A household struggling on the line of subsistence has no leisure for exploring. Owning an ocean fleet matched that judgment too. So, a rich ocean merchant of vast fortune was perhaps Thunder's true identity. And Lightning's golden hair did not look like the blood of the kingdom's mainland, more like the fjord folk from across the sea.
Along the way, Wendy woke a few times. Nightingale had to labour hard to pour a few mouthfuls of water into her, then she quickly slipped back into unconsciousness. Feeling the other's body temperature dropping lower and lower, Nightingale grew more and more anxious. And so, with the two of them travelling in turns, the gorge path that should have taken 3 days was crossed in a day and a half. At the entrance, the horse she had begged from the prince was still tied where she had left it, most of the hay piled before it had been eaten. Nightingale swung onto the horse with Wendy on her back, led Lightning along, and galloped toward Bordertown without a moment's rest. Release That Witch, Episode 60, The Arrangement. Bordertown's second recruitment went far more smoothly than the first. Credit went to the winter food rationing. The militia received more and better food, and on each week's family visit day, many members slipped the bread and dried meat they had saved to their kin. Roland ordered Carter and Ironaxe not to interfere in the matter. The kin carried the food home in delight and spread the news to every neighbor on the street. An army formed of the people was itself a fine piece of publicity. Talk between neighbors worked far better than the town hall's deliberate propaganda. Now, most of the old district knew the story. His Highness's militia paid generously, fed you 3 meals a day, and the fighting against demonic beasts didn't seem all that dangerous. So, when the second recruitment began, old district numbers swelled, and even residents of the new district came to sign up. The number who qualified far exceeded Roland's expectations, so the second militia company was enlarged to 200 men. Carter led their training on ordinary days. When the horn sounded, they would head for the wall and stand by as an auxiliary force. Both the chief knight and the assistant minister had raised objections to this. As things stood, the first militia company was already equal to the task of holding back the beasts. Recruiting a second company, now more than double the first in size, seemed utterly unnecessary. Food and pay above the common standard would weigh on the treasury, and the extra gold royal spent would buy no visible return. But Roland stood by his decision, because these men were not being prepared for demonic beasts.
For now, he still dared not tell his subordinates the plan brewing in his mind. Before the Duke had even made a move, he was already planning to attack the stronghold. Say that aloud now, and Carter and Burrow would surely find it beyond all acceptance. Longsong Stronghold was no border town. As the kingdom's official frontier line, its walls stood a full 10 meters high, built brick upon brick. The Duke and the 6 great families of the Western Territory were all garrisoned in the inner city, with perhaps 1,000 troops to call on. In theory, his militia of under 300 could never take the stronghold in a siege even armed with era-defying muskets. And because of the gods' punishment stones, witches could not be used as decapitation weapons either. Roland had confirmed this with Nightingale again and again. Exalted nobles like Duke Ryan and the 6 families would spare no expense in buying gods' punishment stones donations. They called it to the outside world. These stones, costing anywhere from a few to a few dozen gold royals apiece, could seal away a witch's ability within a certain range. The church proclaimed them its mightiest weapon against the devil, and they were its largest source of income each year. My only chance lies in a field battle. Thanks to the customs of this era, wars between lords are mostly fought by levied troops. To keep the summoned men from slipping away halfway, the Lord basically campaigns in person with the army. And that gives me the chance to fight a battle of annihilation. But how to seize that chance for now, I am utterly at a loss. After all my experience in luring enemies and laying formations comes from films and history books. I have never once actually done it.
Since he could not puzzle it out, better to do what he was good at first, he thought. Roland stretched, walked out of the office, and went alone to the wooden shed in the backyard. The fully assembled steam engine number 2 stood quietly in the middle of the yard. At first glance, its surface was far smoother than the prototypes. The weld marks on the large parts no longer rose and dipped as before. This was the work of Anna's new ability. Her green fire could slip into the tiniest seams to fuse the metal, and the great pieces it joined were more integral than ever. In the development spirit of each later model stronger than the first, and the custom-modified stronger still, steam engine number 2 had been fitted with a centrifugal governor. As humanity's very first automatic control system and feedback system, its appearance could fairly be called momentous. The governor's structure was simple: 2 slender hinged rods with iron balls welded to their tips, and 1 rotating main shaft. At a glance, it looked like the bamboo copter toys of childhood. Rub the stick fast between your palms, and the 2 spinning blades rise on their own under centrifugal force. For the governor, the 2 iron balls played the part of the blades. When the steam engine worked, it spun the shaft. If output ran too high, the balls spun faster, rose under centrifugal force, and pulled the linkage to close the valve down. When output fell, the balls slowed, sank under gravity, and opened the valve wider. Thus, the steam engine always ran at a fairly steady power. With the speed controller, steam engine number 2 could now take on some of the finer machining work, and the gears earlier assigned to the various blacksmith shops had all been delivered, now lined up neatly in one corner of the shed.
Judged by the standards of an industrial assembly line, not one of those gears could be called a qualified piece. The whole batch belonged in the reject bin, awaiting the furnace. But for this era, they were already rare works of art. Gears designed to an involute curve carry an innate harmonious beauty. The wheels, soaked in lard, gave off the distinctive gleam of metal.
Besides the gear sets, the carpenters had finished planing the base and the bearing blocks, and every other part was ready. He had the guard outside the door summon Anna, and together they began assembling the first steam-powered boring machine.
In Roland's plan, this was the fastest route to mass-producing muskets. Having a blacksmith hammer out a barrel by hand took enormous time and labor. With a boring machine, he need only cast iron rods one after another, then drill them straight through with the boring cutter a dozen barrels a day. And by swapping the cutter head, the boring machine could also cut rifling. A rifled flintlock's accuracy would rise another step. That way, I have every confidence of arming both militia companies, nearly 300 men, before winter ends. But Roland still could not guarantee that his people, facing a charge of knights, would calmly reload, aim, and fire instead of dropping their weapons and running. These 2 companies were founded too recently. They had no experience fighting other men. Therefore, I must bring stronger firepower onto the stage to smash the enemy utterly before their charge can even form, and that is the cannon. The god of war in human military history, the cannon's killing power and shock power are beyond anything a musket can match. A single 6-pounder field gun has the range to strike while the enemy is still assembling. No mixed army of this era could keep discipline under artillery fire. With just 3 or 4 field guns, they would never even get the chance to charge.
He had laid the plan out, step by step. With a manual milling machine, he could machine usable gears. With gears and the speed-governed steam engine number 2, he could have a steam-powered boring machine. And with a steam boring machine, he could machine all manner of gun barrels and cannon barrels.
At least 2 months remain before the months of Demon's End. So long as the plan goes smoothly, Bordertown's militia will have the strength to face the Duke's army head-on.